Hello there. My name is Christopher Lloyd, and I am a non-fiction children's writer. And I believe passionately that the real world is far more amazing than anything you can make up. But the sort of books that I write are a little bit different from the books that most people present at literary festivals and when they go and visit schools, because the books I write are all about trying to make connections between different things. And I love making connections. In fact, our brains are designed to make connections. And when you make a connection that you didn't realize before, sometimes you go, wow, because you hadn't realized it before. And that word, wow, is very special because it suggests your brain is enjoying learning and enjoying living. And that love of learning, that wow, is what I really try and capture when I'm writing my books. So making connections is all about the sort of books that I started writing when I thought, let's do a book that connects everything together. Can you imagine a book that goes all the way from the beginning of time to the present day in one single book? And that was the book I first wrote, going about 15 years ago. It was called What on Earth Happened? The complete story of planet life and people from the Big Bang when the universe began all the way to the present day. Quite a big story, as you can imagine. So it's quite a big, long book, lots of pictures and things, but took quite a long time to do. But one thing I discovered in this book, which really made me go, wow, was an incredible fact. And this fact is that every day on the planet Earth, guess how many more people there are? So obviously every day some people die. And obviously every day lots of babies are born. But more babies are born than people die. And in fact, the incredible thing I found out is that every day on the planet Earth, there are an additional 220,000 people. That's like filling up Wembley Stadium 3 times over. And that's happening every day. And they all need houses, they all need water, and they all need food, and they all need jobs, and they all want cars. Can you imagine if every day the world is being more and more busily populated with people, 220,000 people a day? What would that mean? Do we have enough food? What happens to all the rubbish? Where are they going to live? And this incredible fact is behind my new book called It's Up to Us, a terra carta for nature, people, and planet. And I have a copy of the book right here. Now, I am incredibly proud to be able to show you this book because although I am the author of the book, really, I'm not the most important person in this book because I have here a partner in the Prince of Wales, Prince Charles. I'm sure you've heard of Prince Charles. He's the heir to the throne. And for about 40 years, he has been campaigning tirelessly to get people to respect nature and to be able to provide a way for future generations to live in harmony with nature. And this is a really big issue when you've got so many more people on the world every day. We have to think very carefully about not wasting too much resource and not using too much food and not creating too much rubbish. All these things have been really close to the heart of the Prince of Wales, Prince Charles, for over 40 years. So he has very kindly supported this new book about the climate and about what we're going to do about it because there are so many people in the world. He has supported this book by writing an introduction, and I've also partnered with his charity, which is called the Prince's Foundation. You can see it here, which do amazing work to try and demonstrate new ways of living in harmony with nature for anybody to be able to go and see. And they have a house in Scotland called Dumfries House, where they put into practice incredible ways of using wood for making furniture, or incredible ways of using plants for healing people as a natural type of medicine. All sorts of ingenious and brilliant types of wisdom are being captured in the activities they do at Dumfries House. When I heard about Prince Charles launching his new charter called the Terra Carta, I got very excited because Terra Carta is like Magna Carta. It's a new treaty, but this time it's about how we need to treat the planet. And this is key to being able to survive in the future with so many people on the world. We need to try and make sure we treat the world in a more respectful way. Now, the Terra Carta was really designed to tell people in businesses how they could put the planet first. So when they make their products, when they employ their staff, when they're running their businesses, they're thinking about nature, not just about making money. And I thought to myself, well, maybe there's a chance here to take the ideas of terracotta and turn them into a book that could be beautifully illustrated and would tell the story of why we need to put nature at the heart of our thinking to anyone, whatever their age. Even if they're 6 years old or 7 years old, ideally they will be able to understand the principles behind terracotta by using this new book. And that is the background to this book, It's Up to Us. Now, as you may know, in November, there's a very, very important environmental conference happening in Scotland called COP26. And it was important, I felt, to try and make sure that we had this book available by that time. So we didn't have very long to make the book. And I don't know if you know anything about publishing books, but usually a book might take 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, even longer to be able to write and to illustrate and to design and to print and to get into the shops. You know, it all takes time. We had very little time because we only really had from April until August. And we wanted to make sure that this book will be a showcase of how to publish a book in a really sensitive way so it wouldn't damage nature, which means that we wanted to print the book in England, in the UK, rather than have it printed on the other side of the world and sent on a ship. And we wanted to make sure that all the paper was recycled so it wasn't damaging forests and trees. And we wanted to make sure that the ink that's being used was made from organic materials, vegetables, rather than any kind of nasty poisonous liquids that could do harm. So all these things have had to be taken into account in the making of this book. It's Up to Us. We had 3 months, so I started writing the story, but we then tried to find somebody who could illustrate the book. I don't know if any of you are interested in art or painting or drawing, but it takes a long time. And this book would require 33 double pages of illustrations. And we just couldn't find any artist or illustrator who could do it in such a short space of time. So instead of getting one illustrator, we decided, hang on a minute, why don't we try and find 33 different illustrators? And why don't we try and make sure they come from all over the world? We could have somebody from China illustrating, somebody from America, somebody from Australia, someone from Africa, someone from Europe, someone from Russia, someone from Vietnam. Wouldn't that be fantastic? Because this book is about how climate change is affecting everybody. It doesn't matter where you're from. It doesn't matter if you're rich or you're poor. It doesn't matter your background, if you live in the countryside, if you live in the city. We all have to take a new approach to trying to live sustainably and naturally in order to make the planet fit for the future. So how wonderful to have people from all over the world illustrating this book. So that is why it says here on the front, you can see here, with illustrations by 33 artists from around the world. So this book is a story of how nature is before there are people. That's this part here for nature. Then it tells you what people have done, because there are so many of us on the planet, and what damage that has caused. And then it will tell you what the problem is for the planet in the future. And finally, the fourth part is about terracotta, which are the pledges, a series of ways that we can live our lives in the future that we hope will help fix the problem. So when we open the book here, you will see. So here is the contents page, and you will see we have our message from Prince Charles at the top. We have nature, people, planet, the pledges for terracotta, and then you can meet and see all the different illustrators from around the world who've contributed to the book. So let's start off here with this beautiful picture, which is by a lady called Gunella. And I wonder if you can guess where she's from. Sometimes the style of the paintings in the book can give you a clue. And here is the letter from Prince Charles. And he says, children have a unique curiosity for nature and for this amazing planet we call home. And this is because part of being young is knowing that we are, in fact, part of nature ourselves. And when we look at a picture of the Earth from space, it is easy to see how the land, water, and the air are one fragile system working in harmony to support life. So you can see the Prince is very passionate about nature and protecting nature. We're going to come back to this at the end of my talk and find out, because Prince Charles has a little challenge for you and something that you might want to think about and do yourselves to help. Now, part one, nature. We live our lives surrounded by people and other living things. Plants spring up in parks, woods, gardens, even in cracks on the pavements. Animals are everywhere too, swimming in the ocean, singing from the trees, and purring in your lap. This picture was painted by an Iranian artist, and he remembers how when he was young, he used to go and sit in the woods to read books. And he's remembering all the wonderful animals and the trees and the sound of the insects and the sound of the flowing water that really inspired him when he was reading his books in nature in the woods. Microbes, tiny creatures we can only see with a microscope, live in every nook and cranny of the earth. And if you look closely enough, you can find them in the deepest parts of the sea, the driest deserts, inside our stomachs, and even in between our toes. That's right. All over our bodies, in our hair and our toes, and in our stomachs are tiny little microbes that are living, that we can't see them, but all life depends on them. So when we think of nature, what we're saying is we mustn't just think of the things that we can see, we also must remember the things that we can't see, and they're very precious too. All living things nestle in our Earth's thin outer layer, which is made up of three very precious things: the air, the soil, and the oceans. These give us the oxygen we breathe and the wind, water, and food that all life depends on. Now, I wonder if you can guess where this artist is from. The beautiful illustration of the turtle and of the water and of the birds and the clouds and the land, it almost looks like an embroidery, like it could have been made from needle and thread with some beautiful material. This lady, called Poonan Mystery, is from India, and it really gives a flavor of Indian culture when you look at the artwork that she's used. The air, soil, oceans, and all living things, including people, form a circle we call nature. People are part of nature, but nature has been around for billions of years, from long before humans existed. And that's a really important point, and something I discovered when I started writing my books about the history of the world, that people are very new and nature is very old. Billions of years of nature and only a few 100,000 years of people. So nature is like an old lady, and we have to respect her and take care of her because she's been around for so long. And of the unimaginably large number of planets in our vast universe, Earth is the only one that we are sure has life. That makes our world a really wondrous place, and nature an infinitely precious thing. Isn't it amazing to think that of all the planets in the universe, Earth is the only one we know of that has life, and it exists in this tiny, thin layer. And I don't know if you've ever seen a picture of the Earth from outer space, but when the astronauts like Neil Armstrong first went to the moon, and they saw something so special that nobody had ever seen before. For millions of years, people had seen the sun rise, and they'd seen the moon rise, but those astronauts were the first people ever to see the Earth rise. And they saw this blue jewel of a planet in the blackness of space, and they could see how beautiful it was, but also how fragile and lonely it is, which means it's incredibly special, so we must look after it. That's what this picture is all about. And so we move into the second part, about people. And this illustration is by a very famous painter called Sidney Smith. And you can see these children looking out across a beautiful ocean. But in the distance, can you see up here? There's a little bit of trouble brewing on the horizon. You can see a big factory, and you can see smoke and smog and pollution belching out into the air. And this is part of the problem of having so many people on the planet Earth, and why we need to think about living differently with nature to survive in the future. Part 2, people. Humans find everything we need in the nature that surrounds us. Wow, look at all those colors. What's going on this page? People have worked out how to use other animals, plants, rocks, air, and even liquids and gases formed deep within the earth to help us live more comfortable lives. We have used them to make medicines and houses and furniture and clothes and cars and toys and gadgets and lots of other stuff. And you will find on here all kinds of things you might find in the shops or going down the streets or playing in parks or all sorts of things that we think, wow, this makes life fun. But unfortunately, having so much stuff comes at a price. But because there are nearly 8 billion of us humans, all of this happy living has an ugly side. The way we usually make things and grow food releases pollution. And this poisons the air and the water and kills the tiny living things that keep our soil healthy. And on this picture, you can see tractors growing food in a very unnatural way, really, and a crop sprayer polluting the air. And you can see these cows all hemmed in here. Now, not all farming and farmers, of course, are growing things in ways that pollute the earth. Many of them are organic farmers that take care of the earth. What we have to do is to try and find ways to make sure that our farming is always respecting nature and not damaging the environment. Because what happens is, here, with so many of us making, buying, selling, and throwing away so much stuff, mountains of rubbish and rivers of pollution are finding their way into the oceans. Some pollution makes the ocean more acidic, threatening the survival of sea life, including precious corals. Many plants and animals are becoming extinct. That means they are gone forever. And this picture was painted by a man called Nick Hayes, who remembered going into diving into the lakes in Mozambique and off the coast and seeing the beautiful coral reefs, so vibrant in their colors. But this time he's had to tone down the colors because the coral reefs are dying all over the world because the ocean is getting more acidic as the climate gets warmer. And you can see plastic tires and bottles and cups and all sorts of things that damage marine life that find their way into the oceans. You see, there are problems here that we have to fix. For a long time, people thought that because there were so many animals and plants, such a big wide ocean and lots of air and soil, we could carry on like this forever. Other living things might suffer, but not us. We're people, we thought. We'll be okay. We forgot that we were nature too. And this artist comes from Israel, and she illustrates lots of comics, and she really likes to introduce fun and humor into her art. And you can see people doing all sorts of amazing things, and you can see dogs over here sort of pooping in the park, and you can see litter and rubbish and campfires and people having fun with picnics and playing in the pond, but they're not doing it in a way that has regard for nature, because they're throwing away their rubbish. They're not thinking about the plants and the trees and about the air and the soil. And this, unfortunately, has been what's been happening for many, many years. So the big question is, what has all this living and all these people, what impact has it had on our planet? So that brings us to part 3, planet. And then we noticed something. The Earth is getting hotter. Ever since the Earth was formed, more than 4 billion years ago, its temperature has been changing. This is because a gas in the air called carbon dioxide captures heat from the sun, and it works like a blanket, keeping the Earth warm. With too little carbon dioxide in the air, the Earth gets colder, with glaciers stretching halfway around the world. But with too much carbon dioxide, the Earth gets warmer, the ice melts, and water floods onto the land. Carbon, one of the elements in carbon dioxide, is also found in living things. And when they die, their bodies break down and the carbon in them becomes part of the soil and the oceans. Now you can see in this picture, which is painted at nighttime, that deep in the ground we have the roots of the trees, and we have animals, and we have all kinds of things in the soil, and carbon is being captured in the soil as part of the natural processes of life. And then here you can see on the next page what the real problem has become. Over millions of years, billions of tons of carbon from dead animals and plants gets buried deeper and deeper under the ground and under the sea. Eventually, it turns into coal, oil, and natural gas. We call these substances fossil fuels, because they were once the remains of living things. When we burn fossil fuels to heat our homes, run our cars, and make electricity, the carbon is released back into the air as carbon dioxide, making the Earth warmer and warmer. And that is a big problem. So can you see here, this illustrator, Nick Sharratt, has brilliantly shown you how the carbon dioxide from the air goes through the oceans and is used by living creatures to make their shells and inside their bodies. And when the living creatures die, the carbon is trapped in the sea floor, which is why when we pump oil out of the earth, a lot of it comes from oil rigs that are positioned in the sea. But also it happens on land too in the form of coal, because dead trees here, they capture carbon dioxide, and when they die, they eventually decompose into coal, and the carbon in the trees is trapped in the ground. But what happens if all that carbon is taken out of the ground and put back into the air? Remember, carbon works like a blanket, making the world warmer. That's what happens when we take the coal and we burn it in power stations, or we take the oil and we use it in our cars. And that carbon goes back into the air, and the blanket around the world gets thicker and thicker and thicker, and the world gets warmer and warmer and warmer. Too much carbon dioxide is making storms stronger, raindrops bigger, and hot spells hotter and longer. Lush grasslands are turning to deserts, where plants struggle to grow. Forest fires, floods, and hurricanes are happening more and more often. This picture was painted by an Aboriginal Australian artist, where the land around where he lives has turned to desert, and the trees have become dead and barren and burned. And what you can see here are the trees in the shape of the letter Y, because the artist, whose name is Black Douglas, is asking the question, why? Why are we doing this to nature?
Hi everyone, I'm Black Douglas. I'm talking to you from Gadigal country, which is the local Aboriginal name for Redfern, a suburb of Sydney. But that painting is a homage to Maralinga, which is a community in South Australia. In the 1950s, the British decided to test bombs. And so it was one of our first epic environmental disasters. And so these trees in this painting are the aftermath of that explosion, but there's no leaves because everything's dead, and they're in shapes of a Y. And so that's a metaphor for why did you do this? Why are we doing this?
All that extra heat in the air is melting the glaciers and the ice sheets at the North and South poles, and as the ice melts, waters rise and rivers overflow. And because ice works like a mirror and bounces heat back into space, less ice means warmer oceans and a warmer world. The seas are rising at the moment. And eventually, when there's no ice left in the world, because that blanket around the world made of carbon dioxide is so thick, then the seas will rise by a massive amount, 66 meters, which means many of the big cities in the world will become flooded and will be underwater. We really need to do something about this. And this artist from China is showing you how the melting glaciers, this one in the shape of a polar bear, is harming nature, and how we need to find ways to live in harmony with nature in the future. If the world keeps on getting hotter, it will be harder and harder for people, animals, and plants to survive. Cities will flood, which means that millions of people will need to find new places to live. And it's not just humans that will be in trouble. Many more plants and animals may become extinct, further upsetting nature's harmony. And you can see this is a very sad picture. People are having to move from their homes, and they're taking their belongings, only as much as they can carry, and their pets and animals, and they're trying to find other places to live where it's safe, because the land has become too dry, or the land has become too flooded, or there are too many forest fires. So this is called human migration, and it's already a huge problem today, And if we don't do something, it's only going to get worse. But we can do something. This is the good news. Part 4, terra carta. But wait, we can bring nature back into balance. And on this picture, you will see there are people doing all kinds of different things that are making a difference. Even a little thing can make a big difference. If we all do little things, then we can make a big, giant difference. And maybe if you get a chance to look more closely at this picture, you can see some of the things people are doing. Together, we must imagine a brighter future and work together across the world to make it come true. That means it's time for a terra carta, a plan of action for the earth. And this is one of my favorite illustrations in the whole book. You can see the elephant here. And on the elephant is a tightrope that is tied all the way to a skyscraper in a city. And this little girl with the tree on her head represents nature, and she is on the tightrope. And you know, being on a tightrope means you have to be very careful and make sure you don't fall off. But you will see that little seeds are falling from the tree and they're planting themselves in the ground. These are the seeds of hope, of how we can build a world where we can live in harmony with nature in the future. It's time to agree that we will get energy from renewable sources like direct sunlight, wind, and water. We will capture carbon from the air and trap it deep underground or recycle it into clean fuel. And here you can see solar panels on the roof. You can see a wind farm in the sea. You can see a little boy having fun playing outside with a dog, and he's flying a kite. So even his toys are using wind energy. And if we want to carbon capture, the best way we do that, of course, is by planting trees. And that returns the carbon back into the soil like we saw before. So that's our first pledge. Second pledge, we will bring wild plants and animals back to where they used to live. And we will make sure that coral reefs, forests, savannas, and wetlands grow and thrive. So this is a call to make sure that we have special parks and that we don't have too many people disrupting nature, and that we find ways of returning animals to their natural habitat so they can grow and thrive in the future too. We will demand that everything we buy has a label that details its impact on nature, people, and planet. That way, we can choose to buy products that help nature, not hurt it. Now, you can see this artist who actually came from Kenya. Perhaps you can see the style. It looks really African, doesn't it? It's wonderful. And on this is people shopping. And all the items that they're buying have got special labels on them that tell you how much harm they have impacted the environment, how much carbon dioxide has been emitted from the making of these products. Because if you know that, then when you go shopping, you can choose to make sure that we only buy things that don't damage nature. Now, this book, this picture really made me think about we need to find out how much carbon was emitted as a result of making this book. And we found out that it's 280 grams. And on the back of the book, we've done a special label. And this label here tells you that the carbon footprint of the paper in one copy of It's Up to Us is 0.28 kilograms of carbon dioxide, which is 280 grams. And that is roughly equal to the carbon footprint of 5 medium apples, a third of a glass of milk, or 1/5 of a plastic toothbrush. And I hope that really helps you understand, that this one book has not really damaged the environment very much more than 5 apples. And if everything was labeled in a similar way, then you could decide what you want to buy and what you don't. Okay, our next pledge is that we will listen to the wisdom of people whose ancestors lived in harmony with nature for generations. And this picture was painted by an Aboriginal Canadian artist. That is, somebody descended from the First Nations people of Canada, people who were living there far before Columbus and Western people discovered that the Americas existed. And many of these people live very closely in harmony with nature, taking care of the soil, taking care of the water, taking care of the environment. And still today, their descendants can really teach us lessons in the modern world of how we should live in a more sensitive way with nature. We will work together with artists, educators, scientists, engineers, farmers, designers, and lots of other smart thinkers to find the best ways to keep our planet and ourselves healthy. And this beautiful illustration by an Irish artist shows people working as a team. It's no good us just working on our own these days. We have to find a way of working in a team so that we can pool all our energy and all of our enthusiasm for making the world a safer place for the future by doing things in ways that allow nature to thrive. You can see so many different things happening on this picture, from a wind farm and people with organic farming and using bicycles, not cars, and working together in teams to solve problems. We will demand that the leaders of our countries and businesses put nature first, and we will remind them that if they don't act quickly, all we depend on may eventually collapse. And you can see in this picture here, people from all different parts of life, all different ages, coming together for a very special moment, a tree planting ceremony there. And by planting trees, of course, we're capturing the carbon from the air and we're returning it down into the ground in order to try and solve this problem of the world getting warmer and warmer. But if we work together, nature, including people, will be around for a very, very long time to come. And that's the good news. But our final page here, we can do this. We must do this. And we have to do it now because it's up to us. And here you can see children from all over the world jumping up and down in enthusiasm to try to make sure that we make these pledges come true, that we try to make sure that not only for our children, but our children's children and their children too, we can make the world a safer place by living in balance and in harmony with nature. And I hope that this book and the ideas in this book and the story in the book will help you understand and tell grown-ups in your life how we need to do this and how we need to do this now. We can't wait. There's too much to do and too little time. So if you are interested, you might want to show your parents the full text of the Terracotta Pledges in their grown-up form, which you can see at the back of the book here. And if you have a phone, you can scan these little codes and you can hear Prince Charles telling you more information about his terracotta. And then a little further on here, you can see all the information about the artists, the 33 artists that have very kindly done amazing work in such a short space of time to help tell this story through their brilliant artwork. And finally, we have a page about what's happening at Dumfries House with the Prince's Foundation and all the amazing things they're doing to try and provide prototypes and examples of best ways of putting nature first. There we are. This is our book. This is our little contribution. It's up to us. And all I would say to you is thank you so much for listening to my talk. Thank you for allowing me some time to read you this book. And with everything that's happening in November in Glasgow with the environmental conference, COP26, I hope very much that everybody, whatever their ages, whether they're teachers or parents or they're politicians or they're business leaders or whatever, will remember that the most important people are the children of the world today, because they have the most potential for fixing the problems that have been created in the past. They are the ones who can help us move forward and think differently in the future. And that's why for all of you listening to this talk now, I hope you will be inspired to think about what we can do in the future, which means my last message is to take us back to the little letter that Prince Charles wrote at the beginning of the book. Let me read you what he says at the end. He says, what the world needs is for children all around to imagine the type of future you want to build. I don't know about you, but I love to draw and paint like many of the artists in this book. So here's my challenge to you. Take out a blank piece of paper and draw, paint, or write about the future you would like to see, one that puts nature at the heart of everything we do. That way, we can share our ideas with as many people as possible, and together we can help make our planet strong and healthy for generations to come. So that's what I'd like you to do. Just as Prince Charles has asked, take a pen, take a piece of paper, take some paints, take some crayons, whatever you like, and draw a picture of the future you would like to see that puts nature first. And then, if you would like, you can send them to me. I will be thrilled to see what wonderful artwork you come up with. My email address, chris@whatonearthbooks.com, is there on the screen for you, so you could ask a teacher or an adult or your parent to email me your picture, and I will have a look at it, and I will definitely, that will bring rays of sunshine, not only into my life, but maybe if you're happy for us to be able to put these pictures alongside some of the other ones that the artists have done in the book on a website, we can create a gallery of hope and planting the seeds of ideas for the future of how we can put nature first. So please don't hesitate to get involved, get in touch, and I hope together we can put the ideas of It's Up to Us into practice to create a world where everybody is listening to these new pledges about terracotta for nature, people, and planet. Thank you.